Hello, my name is Mary Jane Stone, and today we're going to go on a little nature walk together. We're going to observe some trees and plants, and we're going to do some sketching together, which I think is a lot of fun. It will combine my two favorite things, art and nature. Before we get started, I want to remind you that whenever you go outdoors on a nature walk, the most important thing you need to take with you is a buddy. You need to have an adult, a parent, someone else to go with you on your nature walk, even if it's in your own yard. As we go on our nature walk, the one tree we are guaranteed to see, whether you're in a yard or a park or a nature trail, we in Georgia will see pine trees. And our wonderful pine trees provide a lot of shelter and food for many kinds of birds. They provide food for squirrels and chipmunks, all kinds of birds. One of the things we always notice about pine trees is these big plates of rough bark. They almost look like alligator skin, don't they? Those big plates of rough bark. And when you look carefully and observe those plates of bark, you'll see that there are lots of little holes and areas where insects can get in and hide. And that is why we so often see different kinds of woodpeckers on a pine tree. Pine trees make pine cones that are full of seeds for squirrels and birds, and pine cones provide wonderful shelter, nesting places for birds. I like this big old pine tree so much, I think I'm going to make a sketch of it. And friends, I want you to remember that when you're out on your nature walk and you would like to do some sketching, you do not need a lot of expensive art supplies. You don't want to carry a bunch of heavy stuff around with you. I have a simple tablet of newsprint. You could use copy paper. I have a pencil, and I have a $1 box of crayons. And that's really all you need to make a wonderful sketch outdoors. So let's get started. When I begin a nature sketch, the first thing I start with is a very simple pencil outline. I'm not worried about details. I'm just worried about sort of basic shapes. I am going to have to focus a little bit on my pine tree because there's a lot of other stuff going on in that picture. There's all kinds of bushes and buildings and a little park sitting area. But I'm just going to focus on my pine tree. Look up at those bunches of pine needles on a tree. We see a lot of circles. The clumps of pine straw really make circles. Sometimes the needles of a pine tree almost look like fur. They look very fluffy and furry. Friends, as I've been sitting here, I've seen a beautiful yellow bird go by. It was an American goldfinch. I just saw 2 hummingbirds fly by, and I'm hearing woodpeckers and blue jays talking to me as I sit here. It's a wonderful gift, my friends, to sit quietly outdoors and just look and listen. You will be amazed by all the wildlife you see. Remember that all trees grow out of the earth, so you want to include the earth that the beautiful tree grows from. It has some broken dead branches, and as we move up, the bark sort of disappears, and there are lots and lots of other branches that come out. The next thing I'm going to do to get started with my crayons, I'm going to choose a pretty blue color, and I'm going to put the sky in. And just remember, my friends, that the sky is not a line across the top of the page. The sky fills up the whole background. As I gaze up at my beautiful pine tree, I'm going to look for where the light is coming from. This is morning where I am, so the sky, the light, the sunshine is coming from the east. So one side of my pine tree is lighter than the other. So I think I'll choose some brown. Here's my brown crayon and a black crayon. So I'm going to start sketching in really sort of the dark side of my pine tree. I know you're anxious to make some definite marks. My pine tree actually is casting a shadow. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the dark side of my pine tree. Over here on the lighter side, it might be almost orange. Where the sunshine is striking it, I'm going to have some contrast from that bright sunshiny side. And the pine bark, remember when we were standing by the pine tree and we looked at it, how we saw those plates that we thought they looked almost like alligator skin? Well, they have some gray in there too. So I can lightly mix in. I'm going to use my black crayon, very pale to start with, to get my trunk in there. And I'm actually going to start making some of these branches. Pine trees have very interesting shaped branches. They break off really easily in a storm, so they leave lots of dead branches, which make wonderful places for woodpeckers to look for insects. I hear a blue jay. Blue? Did you hear it too? Over here where the sun is shining, they're very light green. And remember that each cluster of pine needles it's almost like a furry ball. If you look at the pine needles really carefully, you see almost a furry ball shape, and they mass together and they look very puffy and soft in the sunlight. Over here on the sunshiny side of my pine tree, I might stick in a lot of yellow too, so that I can see which is the morning sunshine side of this pine tree. And over on the darker side, I might choose my darker green crayon and really begin to rough in the dark side of my pine tree. This green crayon is not quite dark enough. I'm going to mix a little blue-green in there to make my dark side of my pine tree and even the underside of those pine needles to make them a little darker. Don't be afraid to mix your colors together. We've got a whole box of crayon. Now that I have my sort of general sketch knocked out, now I can really start getting some details in there. I can go back to my dark side of the pine tree. Now that I have sort of my basic sketch down, I can really begin to bear down and put some bright colors in there. All right, my friends, this is just a start, and I know that you can do a beautiful sketch yourself, and I would love to see some of the drawings that you make when you observe nature in your backyard. On Thursday, we're all going to be making an owl sculpture. You are going to make your own sculpture of a great horned owl. And the simple materials that you will need to do that, and these are things everyone has at home, you'll need a mixing bowl, you'll need some ordinary table salt, you also will need plain flour, all-purpose flour, some water, not too much, some cooking oil, and a measuring cup. And you will also need some simple marking tools, maybe a pencil and a popsicle stick. And those are all the things you'll need to make a wonderful owl sculpture of your own.